could say they perhaps were used for quite a long time, but there's certainly no evidence of repeated reuse in the intercutting of features. There are lots of features in the bedrock entry communities. If we go to Mendik, this site we just started excavating the tepe project, we see no evidence, interestingly, for repeated rebuilding on the same location, even though we've investigated quite a few structures now to a sufficient degree, because they're cut down and built on bedrock. So that's quite interesting. The floors are all bedrock, so there's, in one way you could say they perhaps were used for quite a long time, but there's certainly no evidence of repeated reuse in the intercutting of features. There are lots of features in the bedrock floors, multiple post holes and maybe settings for baskets or bedrock mortars altogether. I'll talk more about that in a minute. We'd like to know then how much these floors were reused. I think that's quite difficult. Micromorphological studies of the sediments immediately above the floor might help, but I'm dubious about that because some of these floors have a lot of travertine formed on them before any sediments were really trapped in the buildings, which suggests they stood open and roofless at the end of their lives for a certain amount of time. The settlement doesn't also seem to be that long-lived. The constellation of lithic material I mentioned already suggests it fits within the Moravit II phase. Exactly when that dates to is an interesting question as a result of the nature of the Moravit dates, but potentially somewhere between 9,500 and 9,300, I would suggest. But maybe not that long. If anything, there's not vertical stratigraphy, but horizontal stratigraphy. I refer you back to the fact the site covers 4 hectares, so it seems quite likely that maybe buildings were rebuilt in new locations, perhaps as people went away and came back, or households went away and came back. Having said all that, there is one interesting phenomenon, which is actually massive investment within the construction of these structures. Many of the construction stones are dressed. They're shaped into distinctive ovals. You maybe see that in the walls of some of these buildings in the edge of this particular trench. And the inner walls of the structure, they have outer course walls, and some of them have inner orthostats, which are very neatly dressed and shaped here. So there's a massive amount of shaping and dressing of stones to construct these buildings, even if they weren't repeatedly reconstructed in the same location, for example. Another September last year, but did a full season this year. You can see one of these distinctive hill ridgetop sites outside the Haran plain proper, to the west in the case of Mendik. Quite an extensive site that must fit within, let's say, the PPNA broadly speaking. Obviously, talking about a whole range of sites in a rather broad brush way, given limitations of time. So we can talk about details if you want to get into details later on, presumably after the session, as well as if anyone's got any questions or discussion to add. But I did want to add some new information that's relevant, that results from recent field work. So I'm particularly going to pull out some new info from sites in North Iraq. Talania, Suti and myself and Jeremy Butcher have recently been working on. Karim Shahir, that we've revisited and re-excavated, whose location I'm probably sure you're pretty familiar with. I'll just pop back. That's a sort of way of saying I can't possibly cover everything that could be talked about. I don't know everything that could be talked about, that's for sure. So I'm trying to pick out a few themes that I think some of the evidence from the southern part of the area I'm talking about might give us some perspective on. So this is the sort of area that we're covering. Obviously the southeast Taurus, this area, including the Urfa sites and the Tigris sites, is the main subject today, and I'm giving a perspective from a zone to the south, obviously south of the Syrian and Iraqi border, and one of the reasons, so certainly I've got some perspectives from Iraq. I also wondered